Who's that? Well, I don't know. Get away! Zombies!
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live from the Live Hotel and Casino in Hanover, Maryland.
What a coincidence that you're broadcasting live from a venue called Live.
That's why they call it that, I think. I think it's for podcasters who are broadcasting live.
By the way, I cut in because
Yeah.
you didn't introduce me.
But you always jump in and you say, and I'm Dan
okay.
Simon.
I'm so...
I know. We're all thrown off by my change in time zone here. Maybe what I should do to make us all feel at ease is to put a bunch of hooks in the wall behind me and hang up all of my minor league baseball hats, and then we will feel totally at ease.
Yeah, we're doing this at a different time than we normally do it, from a different location than you normally do it.
I know.
And a different time zone.
Yeah,
so,
and we're recording this the day before it drops.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's just, this is unusual for me, and so I was a bit off my game, but I'm back now. I'm back now into podcast co-hosting mode. Hey, one of the things I don't think I've ever mentioned on this podcast is that talk about how I am broadcasting from the Studio Simon headquarters in Louisville, Kentucky. And I have mentioned that these headquarters are located at an airport, a small civil airport, not the international airport we have 5 miles away. My office is in the former terminal building here. It's got an air traffic control tower on top that's no longer used as the air traffic control tower, but the tower is still there. But it's also located at more or less the corner of Taylorsville Road and Pee Wee Reese Road. Baseball Hall of Famer, strictly a coincidence. I did not choose this building to have my office in because there was a baseball connection. Though he wasn't born in Louisville, he grew up in Louisville.
Was it Pee Wee Reese who famously went and put his arm around Jackie Robinson in the early days of Jackie Robinson?
That was indeed Pee Wee Reese.
That is the association. And whatever else he did on the baseball field, the association I have with him is that he showed kindness in a moment when it was desperately needed. So good for Pee Wee Reese.
Yep.
Dan, speaking of aviation and airports, we're talking about a team here, a new collegiate summer level team called the Richmond Flying Mummies. They are in Richmond, Indiana. And one of the things that their nickname plays off of is the fact that their home state is intimately associated with the history of aviation. So without Indiana, you wouldn't have your Bowman Airfield. So there's a very strong, while I think a lot of people are focusing on the Mummies, because there's also Mummies in Richmond, Indiana, the aviation theme is part of this too. So an interesting team that combines a couple of different themes.
Yeah, I have been to Richmond, Indiana, as a matter of fact, to see a baseball game, a previous incarnation of minor league baseball there, the Independent Frontier League Richmond Roosters. I went to see a game there with my sister, and the ballpark's a really cool, very old ballpark. I just love cool old stadiums, and the field in Richmond is very much that.
Dan, this is a new brand. It has not been out that long. When you create a new brand, how long do you give the sort of public response to it to determine whether it's going to be well received or not?
I've never thought about that. Nowadays, because obviously social media, you know kind of right away how something's being received. I was just listening. Oh, it was the Earn Fund Average podcast.
Those guys.
And they had a guy from the Rome Emperors.
Oh, yeah.
And
just recently.
And as we know, that one was well received right off the bat.
Yes.
But as he told me something I didn't know, which was that everybody locally, not everybody, a number of people locally were unhappy with it because they just wanted it still be the Braves.
Ah, well, yes. You often see that, right? Like, especially if it's named for the parent club, like very often they've got that tie to the parent club. So, I get it. But the earned fun average guys, Eric and Johnny, rightfully, they are in support of minor league teams having their own local identity. So they do a great job with that podcast. Everyone should check that out when they're done listening to Baseball by Design. And speaking of podcast, Dan, we have a podcast episode this week. Can you believe it? The Richmond Flying Mummies are the subject of this week's episode. I'm going to be speaking with Trevor Amerson, who is their general manager. And I'm going to be welcoming back to the podcast John Worthen, who is the designer who created this logo. He most recently was on talking about the Fill It Up regulars from the Sussex County Miners. So he has been on several of our episodes in the past. It'll be great to have John back. And then, Dan, you will be back with a Studio Simon Stumper.
I will. I'm going to go take care of a few things, and I'll be back in a little bit to offer up that stumper.
I'll shoot you a text like 4 or 5 minutes out.
Perfect.
All right, we'll see you soon. All right, everyone. I am so pleased to have Trevor Amerson, who is the general manager for the Richmond Flying Mummies. Trevor, good morning. How you doing?
Great, Paul. How are you?
I am doing really well. This is a brand new brand, the Richmond Flying Mummies. It's really fun. It's made a big splash on social media here. At the time of this recording, it's only been out a little bit less than a month, I think, at this point. The Northwoods League, collegiate summer level baseball. Why is this team called the Richmond Flying Mummies? There's a lot to unpack here, so maybe we'll parse that question out here.
Yeah, no, great question. There is quite a bit. With Richmond, it's a very old, historic town. We did a name the team contest earlier this summer. We did where people vote on the final 5 names. And, originally we kind of combined 2 of the submissions where people had flying themes, where the Wright brothers actually did go to high school in Richmond here at Richmond High School.
That's Richmond, Indiana, not to be confused with any number of other Richmonds that are out there.
Correct. Yes. Richmond, Indiana. And then with them having, with Dayton obviously being an hour away from Richmond, and there's a lot of aviation themes here. That's where you kind of get the flying theme. And then coincidentally, you wouldn't really think of it, but Richmond, Indiana is home to 2 actual mummies. That only mummies in Indiana. There's one museum at a local college in town, Earlham University, at the Joseph Moore Museum, and there's another mummy at the Wayne County Historical Museum, where we actually held our team name announcement back in October.
And I guess that's pretty unusual for a town in Indiana. Like I don't know how many mummies I expect any town in any American city to have, but it's something you would normally associate with, like, a big city, a Chicago, a New York, a Los Angeles, that would have like a really big like museum culture, obviously. So
yeah,
is it, I guess I just have this question. Is it unusual for a town in Indiana to have 2 different sites, each having a mummy that's like 100-something years old?
I mean, it's the first town that I've lived in that has 2 mummies in town for sure. And it's 40,000 people. It's kind of unique to have mummies. And when I first learned about it, when I first took a tour of the town, stay in the hotel, one of the Best Western in town has all of the landmarks and stuff of what's in Richmond, with obviously a jazz history. And now, it had the mummies on there. I was like, oh, cool. There's a mummy in town, and I had to do a little bit of research on it. But so it has a lot of history, and kind of weird that there's 2 actual mummies with actual history that just happened to be in small town of Richmond, Indiana.
So these are you named the sites where they were. These mummies are thousands of years old. The one at the Wayne County Historical Museum, that is, they say 3,000 years old. It was brought over here from Cairo in 1929. There's another one that was brought over to the Joseph Moore Museum of Natural History in the late 1800s. Have you been to see them? Have you seen these mummies?
Yeah. I took a tour of the Wayne County Historical Museum, and that's actually a really cool exhibit. Anybody, in Richmond has to stop by. They have a bunch of the artifacts, and artifacts that would have been found with the mummy that's there. I've not been over to the Joseph Moore Museum yet, so I've not actually seen that one. But that one, we've been in touch. We actually were at a trunk or treat together over which we had to be at all of them with the Flying Mummies theme.
Now, was that just because you were visiting, a popular site in your hometown, or was it part of the research for this team?
After I moved to Richmond, I was actually with the team in Green Bay. So that was kind of all going on when the naming announcement was. So when I actually moved into town, I was able to get over there with that being one of the finalists for the name. So I kind of wanted to make it over there, and then we made the decision to have the naming announcement at the museum.
So you were saying before we started recording, I was just asking, what the reception's been, and you said that it's been largely positive. I'm always sort of curious when a brand like this requires a certain amount of explanation, especially when you're combining two elements of a town's history like that, right? Like with the
Yep.
the Wright brothers and then these mummies, right? Like, hey, like Richmond has two mummies. In terms of like announcing a new brand and sort of getting it out there in the world when there is this very detailed story to tell that people are not necessarily going to be familiar with, how important is it to tell that story? And then conversely, how much can you just rely on flying mummies? That's cool, regardless of what you know about the history of Richmond, Indiana. Flying mummies are kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was super important. One of the main things that we tried to do, we really had it through our social media and through our website to try and explain the story with the write up, of the history of the of the kind of name. It was real easy for people to just look at it right away and not even think about why is this named the Flying Mummies. People are just looking at it and saying that's cool. Because the logo is very, with the mummy, with the aviation theme, it's a very cool logo. So that was easy for people to just take one look at it and say that's cool. And then, people thought a little bit more. And then when they actually went to our socials and went to our website, then they could actually read, when they were puzzled, why we're named the Flying Mummies.
One of the interesting things that I noticed when we talk about flying mummies, you obviously have a lot of aviation theme in it. You've got the old timey goggles, you've got the leather helmet, you've got the scarf
Yep.
that people sort of associated with it. The primary logo has the biplane wings in it, but it also kind of looks like the mummy is just flying under his own steam, right? Like he looks like almost like a Marvel superhero sort of coming at you, like he's just flying like a superhero. Was there any thought of this flying mummy not needing to be a pilot, but just flying on his own?
Yeah, yeah, I think we, kind of let John run with it. And there were a couple of different, versions of different logos, maybe he's flying a plane, maybe that's just something that he can have on the side. There's a bunch of stuff that we can kind of build off of it too. But I think with the actual final logos and branding with everything, with him just being, the pilot aviator that he is, and like you said, kind of the Marvel superhero, kind of makes him look a little bit more, powerful, and he's not, just a guy flying a plane.
Have you all had any sort of like official relationship with the two different museums where the mummies are located?
Yeah, yeah, we like I said, we had our official naming announcement at the museum. So I've been talking with them over the past couple weeks and kind of what we can do to incorporate them into the season, as well as, like I had mentioned, I had been chatting with the Joseph Moore Museum at Earlham, and they're super pumped up about the name as well, and kind of continuing on that relationship too. But yeah, there's for sure going to be a bunch of stuff that we're going to be able to do with them in the future here once we come into next spring and next summer.
We've obviously been talking about the logo, but the uniforms are really fun as well, and they have a design all the way around them that makes it look like the players are wrapped in mummy wraps basically.
Yeah.
That's fun and distinctive and different. What went into the decision to taking this sort of mummy theme and expanding it all the way out onto the uniforms like that?
Yeah, I think it was just kind of baseball is all about the pinstripes, right?
Right.
I thought it was such a good idea, to kind of play into that mummy theme and have those, I like to call it, like the side pinstripes. We got and we kind of have the age theme to it, and it's something that's very unique and I something that I haven't seen done before, and it came out really well. When Rawlings actually gave us the samples of the jerseys, it was awesome, and we're doing a pre-order right now for the authentic jerseys. They've gone bonkers with people, wanting to actually get their hands on them as well.
For a
new team in a collegiate summer level league, to have branding like this that makes a splash and, uniforms that are really distinctive, does that help you draw players? Does that help you recruit in your role as general manager?
Yeah, I think it's kind of all encompassing as well. We're trying to prove that, Richmond is the place to be in the summer and giving them good, facilities, giving them good amenities. But I think, when players are seeing those uniforms and they see all the branding, they start to picture themselves in the jersey. And I think it just kind of adds that one more, besides them getting looks, and getting extra at bats and extra innings in, they're going to look good when they're playing. The old Deion Sanders saying, look good, feel good, play good. So,
So I lived in Richmond, Virginia for 10 years. I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. Obviously, they have the Richmond Flying Squirrels. First of all, who's going to win in a fight, a Richmond Flying Mummy or a Richmond Flying Squirrel?
well, I mean, obviously it's the Richmond Flying Mummy. I always saw the Goosebumps things as a kid, and I thought the mummies were the scariest thing ever. So it's kind of funny that, and yeah, we're crushing. I mean, I don't know about baseball. I hope we can win in that fight, but Richmond Flying Mummies are winning every time.
Do you know whether that was a question, and understanding that you were not there for that full process, but do you know whether that was a question? Was there any concern over the sort of the proximity of those two names, or is it, you're in different leagues, different levels, different classifications? It didn't really matter that much.
Yeah, I think it was always something that was, maybe in the back of our head a little bit, that there is a Richmond Flying Squirrels, which they have a fantastic logo, by the way. I love all their stuff. We just wanted to really make sure that we, got out in front and made sure that, we did our due diligence, making it, we're the Richmond Flying Mummies, we're Richmond, Indiana. We play at historic Don McBride Stadium, making sure that when people look it up, just from simple as a Google search, when people look up Richmond Flying Mummies, that, all of the news stories associated with us, we have the Google business profile in there that clearly states, we're in Richmond, Indiana, we're not the Flying Squirrels, is something that was really important to us, and just making sure that we have all of our branding in place for that.
So one of the ways that I like to explore the logos for a team is to hop on the team store and check it out. So that's how come this little hobby of mine has cost me a lot of money over the years, buying hats for teams.
See all the hats on the wall. They look fantastic.
You can see the hats right now. What you can't see in the other room behind me is almost 600 ice cream helmets now. So I don't know if the Flying Mummies are talking about having little ice cream helmets with the Flying Mummies logo on them. But if they are, yeah. I'll be interested to learn about that in your first season next year. I'm just curious, is there one mark that you have seen is the most popular? I mean, obviously you have the primary logo that we mentioned, has all those elements in it. You've got one that's just the head of the mummy. There's another one that's a letter R wrapped up like a mummy with the goggles on it. Is there one that's that you're finding to be the most popular?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the Flying Mummy, just the head on the hat, which is our home hat, which is just a black, flex fit hat. That's been super popular. And same as that R logo that you were talking about with the wrap and the goggles on it. I'm a huge fan of that logo. It's been those two logos that have really we've been seeing a lot of interest in, is that the mummy head and that R logo.
Well, speaking of this team store and your website, where can people find the Flying Mummies online? Where can people find your new social media accounts?
Yeah. So, all you got to do to find, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that kind of fun stuff. Just look up Richmond Flying Mummies. Go to our website. All you got to do is just type in mummiesbaseball.com.
Sounds great. Well, Trevor, thank you so much for hopping on and talking about the Mummies, and best of luck in your I guess it's your first ever off season, even though you haven't had a season yet, but best of luck preparing for the first ever season of the Richmond Flying Mummies, and congratulations on the successful launch of a really fun brand.
Thank you very much. It's going to be a lot of fun.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. John Worthen, you've been on enough now, John, that I think we're going to call you friend of the podcast.
Absolutely.
We had you on a couple of years ago to talk about your work on the Bismarck Larks and the Minot Hot Tots. Just earlier this year, you were on to talk about your work on the Fill It Up Regulars with Sussex County Miners. That is a really fun one. We are, of course, talking this episode about the Richmond Flying Mummies. What a fun brand, and you created that brand for this team. Flying Mummies. What were you thinking about when you created a flying mummy?
Oh man. Well, I when Matt Bomberg came to me and said, "Hey John, we're putting this team together and we're thinking of calling it the Flying Mummies." I immediately said, "Done deal." And let's not even do any kind of let's just go right into it. That is the name. That is absolutely the name. So what was I thinking? Honestly, I just immediately started thinking of the old vintage airplanes, bringing in that whole concept with the Wright brothers and how that would all intertwine. They thankfully there was so much history there that when we were able to go into that it just worked. It just worked really good. And it was just such a fun name. It there's a lot of things in at least in the way I see things from a branding standpoint where you can always hit into the things that are real in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
the last thing that you usually get to do is brand something that's completely fake and has yet so much fun and has so many opportunities to just stretch your limits creatively. And so the minute I heard that was kind of really where I wanted to reach out and stretch some things. And we did. We had a lot of different concepts that we finally ended up on where we pushed the limits, if you will.
So in some of the previous brands that we've talked about on the podcast, you had the Fill It Up Regulars. It was a gas pump. It was an anthropomorphic gas pump. The
Right.
Bismarck Lark's a bird. The Minot Hot Tots, an anthropomorphic tater tot. This one, though, you combined two pretty different ideas, right? You've got the
Yep.
aviation theme with the Wright brothers, and then you have this idea of, ancient mummies from Egypt. Two very disparate ideas, right? And you were able to merge them into one identity. Is that harder, or does that make it easier almost to have sort of two ideas to try to work with together into one brand?
Honestly, I think it actually made it a little bit more easy
Hmm.
because we weren't dealing with real life in the sense
Yeah.
of like we have to make this this is a bear who has paws and the paws look like this, and if they don't look like that, then people are going to be like, that doesn't look like a bear paw.
No one's
and
telling you
and
that mummy isn't realistic.
yeah, right. So it's like, okay, I'm going to make him fly an airplane and it's going to be the Wright brothers airplane. And they're going to be like, what? But I think, you asked me earlier about kind of where some of the inspiration came from. I think I probably had Scooby Doo on my mind, to be honest.
So good.
I
Absolutely. It
must have
totally has
had
it.
to. I must have had Scooby Doo because it's always that Scooby Doo ending of Mister Feathersworth. What
Yeah,
and then
right.
you
And they
put
would have gotten away with it.
right if it wasn't for those meddling
The
kids.
meddling kids did it again.
So that's kind of I think honestly where I went with it, and from there it just was like the range of freedom that they gave me to just go nuts with it and come up with stuff was so like I was grateful because that is just such not always the case when you're branding.
Visually, this character in the primary logo in particular, he obviously he's a mummy. I'm going to assume he, except for one of the famous mummies that's on display in Richmond, Indiana, is Lady Tan. So I
Right.
could be that this is Lady Tan. Did that is the mummy gendered?
It is not.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so we'll call the mummy they then.
Well, I actually, you know what? I might have to take that back. Yes, I want to say I think we actually, well, yeah, because when we were in the process of creating this, we kept referring to him,
Okay,
and we kept wanting to really make sure that we captured that nostalgia of that mummy of the Scooby-Doo kind of concept coming
okay,
at you and really coming forward and being scary, but not scary, right?
all right.
And when we started to explore into the mascot, realm. And we were looking at the branding for that. That's when I think we really had to decide, was this, is it Lady Tam? Was it just another mummy? Was it just, who is this guy?
Okay.
And it just seemed to work well that it was a male. And as you, I don't know if we'll talk a little bit about the mascot, but I can explain that a little further as to where that storyline ended up kind of coming into it.
Let's do it now, but I'm going to come back to my other question. Let's hear about the
Yes.
mascot.
So we were trying to decide how to get a mascot to not look scary as a mummy, right? Because you're going to have little kids of 3, 4-year-old. It's a family friendly situation. We didn't want them to walk up and then them scream off and run away and take the tickets with them, right? So we were trying to figure out how can we do that, and we went through several renditions, and Matt reached out and said, "Hey, we have this uniform that was already in place, and it was a rooster." And we're like, huh. So we started looking at it. Over time, what we finally came, long story short, where we ended up was Wilbur the rooster wants to be like his buddy the mummy. He's always wanted to fly, but he's cross-eyed. He can't. He's got all the things working against him. He's a chicken. He can't fly. He's cross-eyed. He doesn't last long in the air, and he's not very smart, right? So we went through this concept of Wilbur the rooster wrapped himself with toilet paper to look just like his idol, the mummy. And so in the end, that's where we landed, was with this rooster, and his best friend was the mummy. And it allowed us to be able to really play and have some fun with that rooster as a cartoon, and bringing him in and not be scary.
I just love these stories in minor league baseball where there's something completely accidental that becomes part of the brand, right? Like, so
Right.
the rooster just sort of being there, like, okay, well, how do we play with this rooster? It does remind me a little bit of Mr. Celery from the Wilmington Blue Rocks, where when the new ownership took over the team, there was a celery costume downstairs that had been left behind, and they're like, how do we factor this in? So
Right.
sort of a similar thing. I
Yeah.
do love that story. That is really funny. I'm going to circle back, John, to where I
Yeah,
was going
please.
with this, though, because the primary
Yes.
logo, you've got, when we're talking about combining the aviation theme and the mummy theme here, the aviation, you incorporated that with goggles, the scarf, the leather helmet, so very sort of an era, this
Correct.
not just, of a Wright brothers aviation era, but also kind of like a mummy movie era, right? Like, or even a Scooby Doo era. Now that
Mm-hmm.
you bring that up, but this mummy character, and I was mentioning this to Trevor in the previous segment here, has a kind of pose about him, like he's like a superhero flying on his own. So whether he's wearing all this stuff, flying the biplane that's in the logo, or he may just be a superhero flying on his own. Was that by design? Is he meant to look sort of like, I don't know, Iron Man or other, Superman, like he's flying under his own steam?
So originally, yeah, no, that's great takeaway from it. When we were doing the concept development, I had him in several different poses. One pose, he was in a casket, flying a casket
All right.
with Egyptian wings.
Okay. Nice.
And I mean, it looked, and we kind of made that concept that he had just woke up, popped the hood off, and went, "Hey, I need to fly over and let's get going," right? And then we did another one where he was coming out. The casket was vertical, and he was kind of like leaning forward to that Dracula pose, where Dracula like leans forward out of his casket and kind of looks at you and gives you that, like, stern look. And so in that one, he's actually reaching forward and started to look like he's ready to fight you, and kind of come with some aggression. And in some others, we had him doing different other poses, and so in the end, what we found was we really wanted him to come at the viewer. We wanted to have that energy. We wanted to have that you were talking about, that little bit of that aggression, and that I'm coming at you, whether it's flying at you, whether it's I'm ready to win the game. And so what happened was, as we realized, well, we have all these outside elements that we are using, we probably better trim it down, trim the fat, if you will, and somehow be able to bring it to the fact that he's this pilot that needs to have his last chance to fly, you know. So that's kind of where we brought him forward, let the word mummies become large, and then just brought those wings in just as a taste to say, by the way, guys, this is kind of like 1942 mummies kind of thing, you know. It was really, those wings were kind of like a nod to obviously the Wright brothers, but it was also a nod to kind of that the early days of flight, if you will. And that was kind of the fun nature of why we loved the red scarf and the leather helmet.
Yeah, I love too that the goggles are red, but the eyes are red as well. So the goggles are up on top of the helmet here, and then the eyes of the this scary mummy character are also red. So it's not
Yeah,
just a reflection.
he's a little mischievous. Yeah. Yeah. At first we were like, do the goggles stay red and his eyes stay white? And then when he wears red goggles, his eyes are red. And then I was like, no, he's got to just be always ready to fight.
John, were you involved with the uniforms, in particular the ones that look like they are meant to be the players are themselves mummies wrapped in
Mummies.
not toilet paper, but I guess the fabric?
Yes, I was actually. Yeah, when we were going through that whole process, like I said, they really let me just kind of run with this. And so they said, "All right, I want you to design the uniforms." And we went through a whole slew of ideas, and I said, I think really the ultimate ending is these guys need to just look like the mummies. And so we did. We illustrated, kind of made it look like there was old-fashioned wrapping, and thankfully Rawlings is boy, what they can print is pretty cool.
From a pragmatic standpoint, is that more expensive to print on the entire uniform, or what are the pragmatics of that? Because every inch of this uniform has some sort of, I assume it's screen printing on it.
Right. And respectively, I'm not quite sure. I
Okay.
know in the process, as we were going through the design of it and working through those ideas, if I said, "Hey, we're going to do this here," they would say, "Well, you know what? The honest truth is, John, do whatever you want because we're going to be printing it. It's all sublimated." So in the end, the whole fabric is cut and sew and it's sublimated. And so you can really just, your imagination is it'll do whatever you can think of.
Well, it's the uniform is definitely unique. It's the
Yeah.
literally head to toe covered in that mummy theme. Really
Well,
ties it all together.
and you really can't get dirty with them, right? I mean, it's like you slide. Well, yeah, that was always intended to be there, that dirt.
One of the other details that I wanted to bring up was in the word mark mummies, the
Uh-huh.
letter I is the entombed
Right.
mummy itself, which
Right.
I don't know how much more there is to say about that, except for me just to say I find that to be really engaging and clever. I think that's a great little detail.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, yeah, it was, honestly, that was it. It was just kind of like, how do you say a word mark? Obviously, the word mark mummies is mummies. It's not like you have all these other words and then you have to kind of like visually try to explain some of these words, right? It's doing what it already needed to, but I thought, what else would just give it one more nod that would push it over the top? So I thought, well, look at that. It's a perfect place. So,
The last thing I wanted to ask you about, just because I find
yeah,
this to be really engaging as well, is the script flying lowercase looks kind of like, from afar, it looks almost like a rope or a thread. What were you trying to accomplish there with the script on flying?
well, I wanted kind of that separation of typography, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's almost, in essence, really, you could almost argue the mummy wrote it, because in the end, really, it was just me taking my pen and just
Yeah.
writing flying
Huh.
there. And I thought, yeah, that's the way it should be. Almost kind of a little bit not perfect. And I like that. I think sometimes in our computer days, everything becomes so perfect
Yeah.
that we lose a little bit of character by having it be so perfect.
I think that's really true, right? Like the stuff that Adobe Illustrator allows us to do so perfectly is, sometimes the imperfect has a draw to it that that you lose sometimes. It's a little too easy to let that get away. So I definitely enjoy
Absolutely.
that. Yeah. I lied, John, when I said it was my last question because
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
I'm a lying liar. Uh, one of the things that struck me, and maybe this is, and I asked Trevor about this as well. I lived in Richmond, Virginia for 10 years, and obviously that I was there when they were the Richmond Braves, so that was before they were the Richmond Flying Squirrels.
Oh,
When you
okay.
were when you were working on this, did the Richmond Flying Squirrels come up in your research? Did they keep popping up, or was that just totally separate?
You know what? It was completely separate. And I've seen them and I've known them, and kudos to the branding. They were done really well.
Yeah.
The guys that did that. But interestingly enough, not one time did they come up, and and I think that's kind of I found that interesting because typically you do a lot of research. You're looking around and you're looking at a lot of different brands and you're looking at a lot of different teams. And as many times as I've known them, it was even never talked about or thought of. And I think it was because we were just so hyper focused and fixated on the fact that it was a mummy,
Yeah.
that was flying this airplane. And it was like, oh yeah, and so I think again that goes back to that nod earlier that we were talking about in the beginning of when you have something that is so uniquely different, right? And it's made up, then you really don't have to worry about a lot of things. You just get to be creative and go have a lot of fun with it. And because there's not a lot that you can argue with. It either it's a mummy that flies. you know it's like I said earlier, it's not a bear that has a bad paw, or a fox that the tail's wrong, and so ultimately those are fun little items that you can have some real fun with.
Yeah, well, it is a really fun brand. And I know from our conversation before we started recording here that you've got some other fun stuff lined up that we can chat about in the future. It's definitely the brands that we've already talked about on the podcast have been fun. I know that the ones you've got coming down the pipe are fun. In the meantime, though, John, where can people find Worthen Design? Where can people find the work that you're doing online on social media?
So they can go to worthendesign.com. You can go to my Instagram, which is actually Worthen Design as well.
Okay.
Hashtag Worthen Design.
Brand
Uh,
synergy. Good job.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I don't know many words. That's really what it boils down to. Yeah, so I would say those are probably the two best places at the moment.
Fantastic. Well, John, it's great to catch up with you again. I look forward to chatting again next time you've got one of these fun brands out there in the world. So thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, everyone, welcome back. It is time once again for my very favorite thing that I get to do every single week. I get to invite Dan Simon, designer extraordinaire from Studio Simon in Louisville, Kentucky, who brings every single week a trivia question, a thematic trivia question pertinent to that week's episode or this week's episode. And once again, Dan, you are back. Good morning. Hello. How are you?
Good morning to you, Paul. I am fantastic.
Also, it's 4:23 in the afternoon right now. I said good morning. Hello. How are you? Purely out of habit.
And I said I'm fantastic purely out of habit, not even
Yeah.
thinking about the time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yep.
We continue to be thrown off by all of the changes this week.
Yeah, talking about doing things the same way or the same time, when I ask these trivia, these stumpers,
Hmm.
I will read the possible answers as A, and then what it is, B, and then what the B is, and then C. And I was walking back to my office from lunch at home this afternoon, and I was thinking, do I need to say A, B, and C?
Mm,
Like, does that, because when
sure.
you answer, you don't say B,
Right.
or you don't say the letter, you say the answer. So I want us to decide right now whether, I'll tell you what, let's try it today
Yeah.
without A, B, and C, and
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
just see how that goes.
We are just wild. This is let's see how this goes. Listener, buckle up.
Okay, buckle up indeed. Here we go. So, with the name of this team being the Richmond Flying Mummies, that got me to thinking about classic horror movie characters. You know, there was the Mummy. I think the name of this movie, and this way predates me. I'm older than you, Paul, but I'm not old enough to have seen this movie or even been born when this movie was made. But The Mummy's Tomb, I think, was the movie starring Lon Chaney Jr. as the mummy. You know, we're talking about those days, black and white, just classics. And you've got Frankenstein's monster. A lot of people think the monster's named Frankenstein, but it's not. It's Frankenstein's monster done by Dr. Frankenstein.
Dr. Frankenstein. He's
Right.
the scientist. But what's his monster's name? Like everyone always loves to make that correction. They're like, that's not the name of the monster. That's the name of the scientist. But does the monster have a name?
I don't think so. I think it's just referred to as Frankenstein's monster. It's kind of interesting if you think about it, that you know what? I've never seen this old movie I'm making reference to, but I think about this. If it did have a name, I think it would come to mind right away.
Right.
So,
Right. What about young Frankenstein? In that movie, is young Frankenstein also a scientist?
yes,
Okay.
yes. It's the grandson of the original
Of Dr.
Frankenstein,
Frankenstein.
Dr.
Okay.
Frankenstein. So you've got Frankenstein's monster, Frankenstein's monster.
Frankenstein's monster.
Okay, but you've got Frankenstein's monster, you've got Dracula,
Yeah.
The Wolfman, the Phantom of the Opera,
Sure.
Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah.
You even have The Blob, although that might have been a color movie. So with all of those characters in mind, our studio Simon Stumper today asks, which of these characters from classic horror movies was not also used as the name of a minor league baseball team?
Wow.
Was it zombies, counts, or werewolves?
Zombies, counts, or werewolves?
Two of them were names of minor league teams. One was not.
Wow. I can't wait to hear. I'm waiting for any of them to pop up and feel familiar, and none of them do. Counts would be funny because there's kind of a baseball connection there, like you've got a full count.
Speaking of a full count,
Yeah.
now I'll tell you this after. I want you to concentrate on the answer.
Okay.
I'll
Okay.
tell
Okay.
you this
Okay.
after
That
you answer.
not pertinent, I guess. So I am gonna say that there probably was a werewolves. I like werewolves. Counts. There could be like a baseball connection there. I get it. I get it if there were. That's sort of the least visually appealing to me. I guess they could have done like the Dracula, the Dr. Acula. And I am going to say, Dan, I'm just waiting for inspiration to strike, and it's not. I'm going to say werewolves is the fake one.
Do you want me to tell that story I was going to tell
Yeah, go ahead.
and I stopped myself, or do you want me to tell you whether you're right or wrong first?
All right. Well, you know what, Dan? I don't often do this. I'm going to backtrack. I felt right from the beginning that counts was the one that was not going to be real. So I'm going to go counts. I'm backtracking and I'm going counts.
Well, this is a first.
Yeah.
This is the first time you were wrong twice on the same question.
Zombies. I felt like zombies was the safe real one. So I'm good and wrong on this one.
Okay, well, now here's the story I was going to tell. I was at a minor league baseball game years ago, well before I ever met you, before I even moved to Louisville. I was either at a High Desert Mavericks game or a Rancho Cucamonga Quakes game, one of those two, I believe. And on this video board, the count was 3-2. And on the video board, there was an animation of a Count Dracula character, and he burps, and which was funny in and of itself. And then it said under him, full count. And I thought that was genius. I've never seen it again. Somebody's got to revive that animation or do a new one.
That is funny.
But also, ever since then, that made me realize what a perfect name that would be for a baseball team. And I have been yearning to do the brand identity for a team somewhere called the Counts. You know what? Oh, what would be great is this. There is a college, a D3 school in Lexington, Kentucky, just over an hour from here, called Transylvania University.
Right.
So they should be the Transylvania Counts.
Absolutely, they should be the Counts. It would be. So Zombies was the fake one.
Okay, yeah. So let's talk.
Yeah.
I digress. So let's get back to the.
Yeah, no. But I do enjoy that story very much. That's a very funny story.
Believe it or not, you would think. So there was a team called the Counts and a team called the Werewolves. You would think both of them would be somewhat recently. Yeah. Because it hasn't always been that clever, funny, as you like to call them, goofy names are being wacky. I'm sorry, have been used, at least with the prevalence that they're used today. So the Pulaski Counts, that was a team first in the Class D Virginia League in 1942. And then it was, they only played in that league in 1942, in that league in 1 year in 1942. Then they were revived in 1946 and played till 1950 in the Appalachian League. Now, that team most recently had been the Pulaski Yankees. Okay. And when they got, what do you say when, not the Death Star, what do you say?
The Vogon Destructor Fleet.
Yes. when they came and contracted 40 teams out of minor league baseball, and the Appalachian League became a collegiate summer league, they changed their name to the Pulaski River Turtles. Yeah. And the first ever alternate identity they did as part of this past season's celebration of the 90th anniversary of their ballpark, Kelfie Park, and they played as the Pulaski Counts.
That is a way back. That is a throwback, a way back throwback. The Pulaski River Turtles, my favorite little fact about them is that their primary logo features a turtle sliding into home plate from the wrong direction.
Yeah, we talked about this.
We've talked about this.
And
okay.
I had an explanation.
We decided he overran the plate
and he came back to touch the plate.
That is quite the narrative that logo tells.
It's obvious that that's what happened.
Yes.
So now, more recently, to me, this feels recent to me, but to sixth grade Will, he wasn't even born when this happened. Jeez. We had the London, and that's London, Ontario, Canada, not an overseas team.
Right.
The London Werewolves of the Independent Frontier League from 1999 through 2001. Now, check this out. This is actually really wonderful.
Okay.
So even though this song is not so recent anymore, I'm sure everyone except for maybe sixth grade Will is familiar with the song Werewolves of London by Warren Zevon.
For sure.
Well, it turns out that the London Werewolves mascot was named Warren, middle initial Z, Vaughn, like Ricky Vaughn or Mo Vaughn. So Warren Z. Vaughn.
That's
Warren
very funny.
Z. Vaughn.
That's quite good. I feel like I should have remembered the London Werewolves, because now that you say that, that does ring a little bit of a bell for me. So that London, Ontario was responsible for perhaps the most ill-advised minor league baseball logo ever. I see her nodding. The London Rippers playing whimsically off of Jack the Ripper, famous violent murderer.
A violent serial murderer.
Serial murderer who perpetrated violence, particularly against women. So great idea for a baseball team there at the London, Ontario.
And not surprisingly, they did not last long.
That team was short-lived.
I was contacted to do that identity.
Oh yeah?
Yep. And I didn't do it, and I don't recall what the reason was. I probably because I gave him a price and he had sticker shock. So
that's fair.
Okay.
That's fair. Famously bad idea.
Yeah.
Dan, as always, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for turning this around on short notice. As our listeners may have gleaned, this was a quick turnaround on this one and under different circumstances from usual. So it's been fun, though.
It's always fun for me to do this. So thank you for having me on as your stumperer. And I will see you in 1 week.
See you next week, Dan.